I found the email at 6:17 a.m. on the morning of my wedding. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it began with a single notification that changed everything. The subject line read, "Can't stop thinking about last night." At first, I thought it was spam. But then I saw the sender's name, Evan Parker. A name I knew too well. My best man. Inside the email was a photo, my fiancée, Claire, in the hotel room we'd paid for that morning. Sitting on the bed, wearing the white silk robe I'd bought her as a gift. And Evan's reflection in the mirror behind her, shirtless, holding his phone, smiling. I remember the exact moment the world went silent. The air felt heavy. Even the light coming through the window seemed different, harsher. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just stared at that image until the meaning sank in like slow poison. My name's Daniel Reeves, 34 years old. Systems engineer. The kind of man who plans everything down to the minute. For the past year, my life revolved around this wedding. The venue, the guests, the perfect vows. I thought I'd built something solid. But that morning, all I could think was, I've built a lie. I didn't explode. I didn't throw anything or call her name. I just sat there in my tucked shirt, staring at the email. Then I hit reply. My fingers typed 5 words without hesitation. I got your message, Evan. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I took a deep breath, closed the laptop, and started getting dressed. By 8 a.m., the groomsmen were downstairs, laughing, drinking coffee, completely unaware that one of them had already destroyed the day before it began. Evan walked in like nothing happened, smiling, clapping me on the shoulder, saying it was the big day. I looked him in the eye, nodded once, and said he was right. It was a big day, just not for the reason he thought. I decided right then I wasn't calling off the wedding. Not yet. Not before everyone was in that church. Not before the vows. Not before they both believed they'd gotten away with it. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one they'd never forget. The drive to the venue felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life play out from the passenger seat of my own body. The world outside looked normal, blue sky, church bells, people in suits. But inside me, everything had already ended. I just hadn't told anyone yet. Evan sat beside me in the front seat of the limo, scrolling through his phone like the coward he was. My best man. My friend since college. The man I'd trusted enough to stand next to me when I said my vows. He made jokes, asked if I was nervous. I told him I was fine. My voice sounded calm, steady, almost detached. He didn't notice a thing. When we arrived, the photographer was already waiting outside, snapping pictures of everything. The flowers, the suits, the rings. I let him. Every photo would serve a purpose later. Claire's bridesmaids were inside the church, giggling, rushing around in satin. I caught a glimpse of her through the open doorway. White dress, veil pinned perfectly, bouquet trembling in her hands. She looked radiant, like nothing had happened. For a moment, I almost wanted to believe that maybe I was wrong. Maybe the photo wasn't what it looked like. But then I remembered the reflection in the mirror, the casual way Evan had smiled, the subject line of that email. No, I wasn't wrong. I'd just been blind. The ceremony started right on time. The church filled with family, friends, and the kind of polite happiness that comes before disaster. My mother wiped a tear as the music began. The organ echoed through the room. And then Claire appeared at the far end of the aisle, her father walking her forward, step by step. Everyone turned to watch her. Everyone except me. My eyes stayed fixed on Evan, standing just a few feet away, adjusting his tie, pretending to be proud. In that moment, I decided how it would end. Not with shouting, not with chaos. With silence. With precision. I'd let her walk all the way to the altar. I'd let the words, "I do," hover in the air. And then, when the world thought they were witnessing love, I'd show them the truth. I looked at Evan, then back at Claire. She smiled at me like she still owned my heart. She had no idea I'd already buried it hours ago. When the music stopped, the silence hit like pressure in the chest. Claire reached the altar, her hand trembling slightly as her father placed it in mine. I felt the weight of her fingers, light, cold, false. Her eyes met mine, soft and trusting, the same way they had the night she told me she loved me for the first time. I almost laughed at how convincing she could be. The pastor began the ceremony, his voice steady and warm, but I barely heard the words. Everything around me blurred into background noise. The candles, the rustle of dresses, the faint hum of the air conditioner. I was focused on timing, on control. Evan stood to my right, too close, pretending to be supportive. He shifted nervously when our eyes met. He probably thought I was just overwhelmed. He didn't realize I was memorizing every movement, every flicker of guilt that crossed his face. When the pastor asked if anyone had reason to object, the room went perfectly still. I looked at Claire, then at the crowd, then back to the man who'd betrayed me. For a moment, I thought about ending it right there, about showing everyone the email, the photo, the proof. But no, that would have been too easy for them. Too emotional. Too loud. I waited instead. The pastor moved on, guiding us toward the vows. Claire's voice shook as she repeated the words, her hands clutching mine. For better or worse, for richer or poorer. She couldn't meet my eyes when she said faithful. That was the moment I knew she suspected something. Then it was my turn. The pastor handed me the small microphone, his expression warm, expectant. The entire church was silent, watching. My mother smiled from the front row. Evan looked down, pretending to fix his cufflink. Claire waited, lips parted, eyes glassy with emotion she didn't deserve. I took a slow breath. My voice came out calm, almost gentle. I said her name, then paused. Before I say these vows, I began, I need to tell you something. A ripple moved through the crowd. Claire froze. Evan's head jerked up. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the edge of the folded photo. Cold paper. Hard truth. Everyone waited. I smiled faintly and said, "You'll want to see this first." The photo unfolded with a faint crackle of paper, loud enough to echo in the silence of the church. I held it between two fingers, steady, deliberate. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Every pair of eyes was already on me. "This," I said slowly, "arrived in my inbox this morning." Claire's smile collapsed. The color drained from her face as if someone had pulled a plug inside her. Evan froze beside me, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and panic. I looked at the pastor, then back at her. "Before we say our vows, I think honesty would be appropriate, don't you?" Gasps rippled through the pews. Her mother clutched her pearls like it was a reflex. Someone in the back whispered, asking what was happening. But I didn't look away from Claire. Her lips moved, soundless at first. Then she said my name, barely audible. I set the photo down on the altar table. "You and Evan," I said quietly, "had a busy night, it seems." Her eyes filled with tears, but I could see the calculation behind them. Not guilt, not remorse, but fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing control. She whispered that it wasn't what it looked like, that she could explain. I let her speak for a few seconds before I turned to the crowd. "I believe she deserves the chance to explain," I said evenly. "But I think we can all agree this isn't the place." The pastor tried to intervene, saying perhaps we should step outside, but I shook my head. I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical, calm, controlled. I removed the ring from my pocket, placed it carefully on the table next to the photo, and looked at her one last time. "You can keep the dress," I said quietly. "You earned it." Then I turned to the audience, my family, her family, the friends who thought they were attending a celebration. "Thank you for coming," I said. "But there won't be a wedding today." And with that, I walked down the aisle. No yelling, no chaos, just the sound of my footsteps against the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing, calling my name, the pastor trying to calm the room. But I didn't turn around. Because when you know the truth, silence says everything. Outside, the sun hit me like a slap. The church doors closed behind me, muffling the chaos inside. Voices rising, Claire crying, Evan trying to explain, my mother calling after me. But I didn't stop. I walked straight to the parking lot, loosened my tie, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. Every detail of the morning replayed in my head, from the email notification to the way Evan had smiled in that photo. It wasn't just betrayal, it was arrogance. They'd thought I'd never find out. They'd thought I'd stand there, blind and proud, marrying a lie. Half an hour later, I sat in my car, still parked outside the church. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages from friends, missed calls from my parents, and finally one from Claire. A single sentence, "Please don't ruin my life." I stared at it, Then at the church doors reflected in my windshield. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop. The email she'd sent to Evan was still there, timestamped at 2:04 a.m. That was 3 hours after she'd texted me goodnight, saying she couldn't wait to become my wife. Attached below the photo was a line that burned itself into my memory. It feels wrong, but so right. I forwarded the entire chain to myself again, a backup. Then I closed the laptop and started the engine. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't driving home. Not to the house we'd picked together. Not to the bed she'd already shared with someone else. By evening, I checked into a small motel off the interstate. The kind of place where no one asks questions. The owner handed me the key without looking up from his paperwork. I sat on the bed, still wearing my dress shoes, and let the silence settle around me. It was strange. No anger, no tears, just clarity. I'd spent months planning a future that didn't exist. Now, I was planning something else entirely. Not revenge. Not destruction. Something quieter. Because the one thing people like Claire and Evan never understand is that silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The motel room smelled like dust and cheap detergent, but it was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you think clearly. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like a groom who'd been left at the altar. I looked like someone who'd finally seen the truth. Claire had always believed I was predictable, the dependable man who followed schedules, paid bills on time, never raised his voice. She mistook that discipline for weakness. What she didn't realize was that discipline, when broken, becomes precision. By 7 a.m., I was in a cafe downtown, laptop open, phone buzzing with unanswered messages. My best friend, the other best man, Jake, had texted me that Evan and Claire were gone before anyone could stop them. No one knew where. That was fine. I didn't need to chase them. I already had everything I needed. I opened a folder I'd created years ago labeled Personal Records. Inside were copies of shared documents, leases, accounts, her real estate license paperwork. I'd set it up back when we first moved in together, more out of habit than suspicion. Now, it became useful. I saw the overlap immediately. Evan's name tied to a series of small consulting payments listed under her agency. It wasn't just an affair. It was business, or something close to it. Claire had always talked about wanting financial independence. I thought that meant ambition. It meant something else entirely. She and Evan had been funneling small amounts of client money through a dummy account. Nothing large enough to trigger audits, but consistent. I didn't print anything. I didn't tell anyone. I just started documenting, backing everything up to an external drive. Then I called an old acquaintance, a corporate investigator named Morgan, someone who owed me a favor from years back. I told him I needed a quiet background check on 2 people. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Send me what you've got." That night, I drove back to the city. From the outside, it probably looked like I was trying to rebuild my life. But I wasn't rebuilding anything. I was taking measurements. Because the wedding wasn't the betrayal's end. It was only its opening scene. 3 days passed before Morgan called. His voice was calm, professional, but I could hear the weight behind it. He said he'd found something interesting. When I asked what that meant, he paused before answering. "Your fiancé and your best man weren't just cheating on you," he said. "They were working you." I asked him to explain. He told me Evan had been under investigation before. Nothing public, nothing proven, but there were records. Fake valuations, inflated invoices, quiet payouts. Small cons that slipped under the radar. Claire had access to client listings through her real estate agency. Together, they'd been selling more than houses. They were selling trust, manipulating buyers, redirecting deposits, covering their tracks through temporary holding accounts. And the most convenient account they used was mine. I didn't react right away. I just listened. Every word confirmed what I'd already started to suspect. The wedding had been more than a relationship. It had been a transaction. A way to merge finances, to clean the money under my name. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They'd built their future out of my signature. Morgan said he could compile a full report, with timestamps and bank records, but he needed access to the home network Claire used. I still had remote access from when I set it up for her. I sent him the credentials before we hung up. That night, I sat in the dark, the city lights flickering through my blinds. I thought about how carefully they'd played their roles, her affection, his loyalty, every moment crafted to make me believe I was safe. And I realized something that made my pulse slow to ice. They hadn't made a single mistake until that email. That photo wasn't arrogance. It was misdirection. They'd wanted me distracted by the affair, so I wouldn't notice the money. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, the pieces aligning like code I'd written myself. Claire and Evan thought the humiliation ended at the altar. They had no idea the story was still being written by me. Revenge wasn't loud. It didn't shout. It collected evidence. It waited for timing. And when it finally arrived, it made no sound at all. 2 weeks later, the final piece fell into place. Morgan sent me a full report, a digital dossier, thicker than any wedding album could have been. Every document was there: bank transfers, real estate contracts, email chains between Claire and Evan disguised as client correspondence. They'd used my account as a buffer for their money flow, sending consulting fees to a shell company under Evan's name, then moving it offshore. He said one more thing before we ended the call. "You could take this to the authorities right now. It's airtight." But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove back to the house that used to be ours. The for sale sign still stood in the front yard, crooked from wind. Through the window, I could see dust settling where our furniture used to be. I stepped inside quietly. The air smelled like stale flowers and leftover lies. Her perfume still lingered faintly, like a ghost that refused to leave. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen where she'd kissed me while checking messages from him. The office where I'd once helped her set up her computer. The bedroom where she'd promised forever. Every space was a reminder, but not a wound anymore. Just data. In the office, I found the small safe she thought I didn't know about. I'd watched her hide the key months ago, tucking it inside a decorative vase on the bookshelf. I retrieved it, opened the safe, and found exactly what I expected: an external drive, wrapped in tissue paper, labeled work files. I didn't need to look at it. I already knew what it was, the same kind of drive they'd used to move the money. But this one, I suspected, was her insurance. People like Claire always kept proof in case the game turned against them. I left everything untouched except the drive. I took it with me, locked the door behind me, and walked away. That night, I uploaded the contents to Morgan. By morning, he confirmed it. A complete mirror of the financial trail, detailed enough to link her directly to every fraudulent transaction. I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the city skyline from my apartment window and thought about how quiet justice can be when you build it right. They'd used me as a foundation for their scheme. Now I was the one holding the structure, and I'd decided exactly how it would collapse. By the end of that week, I was ready. Every file, every message, every transaction was organized, time-stamped, and backed up in 3 separate locations. Morgan's report sat in a sealed envelope on my desk. All that remained was timing. People like Claire and Evan relied on silence, on no one daring to expose them. But I'd learned silence can cut both ways. I drafted 2 emails that night. One addressed to the state's Financial Crimes Division, and another to the board of Claire's real estate firm. Both contained links to the evidence, everything they'd done, step by step, dollar by dollar. I didn't hit send right away. I waited until morning, when I knew they'd both be awake to feel it happen in real time. At 8:03 a.m., I pressed send. The effect was immediate. By 9:15, Morgan texted me. "They're moving fast." The bank accounts were frozen. The firm's legal department had issued an internal notice. And by noon, Evan's name had disappeared from his company's website. I didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in it, just inevitability. They'd built their empire on false signatures and arrogance. It was only natural it would crumble under the weight of its own design. Around 1 p.m., my phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was shaky, desperate. She said she didn't understand why this was happening, that she was being targeted, that she knew it was me. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it either. I just listened to her spiral, talking about how everything was gone: her job, her accounts, her reputation. She asked me if I'd ever loved her. I said I had. Once. Then I hung up. The following day, I met Morgan one last time at a small diner on the edge of town. He slid a printed article across the table, a news piece about an ongoing fraud investigation involving 2 unnamed suspects under federal review. He said they'd likely face charges soon. I nodded, folded the article, and slipped it into my jacket pocket. When I left the diner, the sky had that heavy, still feeling right before rain. The kind that warns you a storm's coming, even when you've already survived one. Justice wasn't loud. It never needed to be. It just waited until the right moment. And then it fell, quietly, perfectly, without mercy. A month passed before the final call came. Morgan told me both Claire and Evan had been officially indicted. Mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. The charges sounded sterile, procedural, but behind every legal term was a choice they'd made. Every lie, every forged document, every moment they thought they were smarter than the truth. They'd each been released on bail, waiting for trial. Their lives were frozen in place. I didn't celebrate. I didn't drink or call anyone. I just listened as Morgan spoke, thanked him for his work, and hung up. That was the end of it, at least for me. The following weekend, I drove back to the church. The same place where everything had collapsed in front of 200 people. The parking lot was empty, the doors locked. Through the stained glass, I could see faint outlines of the altar. The place where I'd stood, holding that photo. It felt like a lifetime ago. I sat on the steps for a while, the cool stone pressing against my palms. It was strange how quiet the world could become after chaos ends. You expect a rush of freedom, some sense of triumph. But what you get instead is stillness, like standing in a house after the storm has passed, realizing the noise is gone, but so is everything that used to fill it. When I finally got home, I opened my laptop one last time. The folder with all the evidence was still there. I deleted it. Then I emptied the trash. Not out of forgiveness, out of finality. They'd already lost everything that mattered to them. Keeping proof of their downfall felt like holding on to poison. I spent the next week rebuilding quietly. A new apartment, new work projects, a routine stripped of pretense. No vows, no promises, no illusions. Just peace. Sometimes people ask if I regret not walking away sooner. The truth is, I don't. I needed to see how far they'd go, how deep the deception could run. Because once you've seen the full depth of betrayal, nothing can fool you again. Claire once told me that love means trusting someone with your future. She was right, but trust isn't given. It's tested. And on the morning of our wedding, she failed every test. What I did at the altar didn't ruin my life. It saved it. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.